Linux for the desktop has long been known as supporting old computers which no longer have the resources to run the latest version of Windows or Mac OS. And that's still the case. However, as time passes, the definition of old is changing. Some of the major distributions, such as Ubuntu, have stopped supporting 32-bit architecture in their latest releases, and others are contemplating that. But there's still lots of distributions such as Linux Mint 19, MX Linux 18, which support 32-bit architecture. You can count on the number shrinking, though, as time goes on. But the difference between 32-bit and 64-bit architecture is fairly well defined, and it's fairly simple to find out what a particular distribution will support. What's a little more subtle and has been creeping up on us is that newer versions of the Linux kernel, especially 4.18, 4.19, 4.20, etc., no longer support certain 64-bit versions completely. And people running older 64-bit computers, such as I do, have found problems with recent versions of the Linux kernel. In this recent video, I discussed finding memory leaks in MX18, Ubuntu Mate 18.10, Fedora 29, etc., all running kernels 4.18 or 4.19. I did not find memory leaks in earlier versions using kernel version 4.15. Just anecdotally, it seems that these problems with memory leaks are limited to computers that do not use Intel Core technology. People running Core i3, i5, i7 systems don't seem to have a problem like this. And not too many people have discovered memory leaks, but that's because it takes a long time to find a memory leak, and if you just take a quick look at a distribution, you won't spot a memory leak. But others have reported problems with booting, and sometimes they have attributed this to the particular distribution that they were running. And if you read between the lines, a lot of these distributions are Arch-based or Fedora-based, or distributions which tend to use the latest Linux kernels. A while ago, Phoronix carried this article that Linux 4.18 is appearing to cause problems for those running older CPUs, and it mentions problems isolated to Intel Core 2 Duo-era processors. If you Google problems with Linux kernel 4.18, you're going to find a whole series of problems, and looking through here, I couldn't find anything resembling the problems I encountered. There are pages and pages of problems. And if you Google 4.19, you'll find the same thing, pages and pages of problems. Now, I haven't tried 4.20 yet. It hasn't been released on any of the distributions I've tried. Of course, you can Google how to find a kernel that will work with your computer, and there's lots of advice available for that. The other thing I would suggest is trying any distribution you're interested in, preferably on an external hard drive, and give it a good workout. Let it run an intensive application overnight to see if there's any memory leak. Don't just run it for 5 minutes to see if it works. Of course, if it doesn't boot at all, you know you've got a problem. Fedora and Arch-based distributions tend to update to the latest kernel version. Of course, you can always roll the kernel version back, but it's easier with some distributions than with others. Debian and Debian-based distributions, such as MX Linux, which I'm using at the moment, tend to have the most flexible assortment of older kernels available. Now, some distributions like MX Linux have a kernel switcher which allows you to choose between 3 or 4 available kernels. If you're going to install a kernel from your package manager, such as Synaptic Package Manager in this case, Remember, you not only need to install a particular kernel version, of which there are many here, but you also have to find the Linux headers for that kernel version and install those, and there may be some other kernel extensions associated with that particular kernel version which you'll have to install to get the kernel to work properly. So you can still use modern versions of Linux with older machines. I'm running MX18 quite happily with kernel version 4.15. I haven't had a bit of problems with that kernel version. And I have Windows machines from the Vista era and even the XP era on which I'm able to run Linux 32-bit versions. Of course, I can't view high-definition videos, but I can send emails, write documents, calculate spreadsheets, do the normal things that you might need a computer for. So you just have to be careful what you're doing and do a little research before you jump. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.